Why do people risk everything chasing objects that may never exist? Lost treasures like Copper Scroll or the Flor de la Mar are more than vanished artifacts. They are symbols that reshape identity, obsession, and history itself. Expeditions, archives, and legal battles reveal how absence creates power, inspiring myth, speculation, and high-stakes intrigue. This video dives into the human drive behind treasure hunting and the real-world consequences of loss. Each case shows how missing objects leave a mark far beyond their material value. Discover the unseen forces that missing treasures exert on our world. Don't forget to subscribe and like before we begin. Imagine a photograph frozen in time, not of a happy occasion, but of history's most audacious theft. Long before cameras existed, the ancient world had its own form of documentation. Bas reliefs carved in stone, meant to immortalize power and dominance. One of the most striking examples is the Arch of Titus in Rome. There, for all to see, Roman soldiers marched through the city streets, straining under the weight of a treasure unlike any other, the golden menorah from the Second Temple in Jerusalem. This is not a legend. This is the closest we have to a visual record of a treasure's capture. The Arch of Titus is the ancient equivalent of a photograph of a crime, capturing the brutal imposition of Rome over Judea. And yet, this visual testimony is only the beginning of the story, a story that spans continents, centuries, and civilizations, and ends, frustratingly, in disappearance. The menorah itself was a masterpiece of sacred artistry. Crafted from a single talent of pure gold, historical estimates suggest anywhere from 30 to 50 kilograms, though the historian Josephus mentions a staggering 100 minae. It was more than a lamp, it was a symbol. Each of its 7 branches reflected the divine order, the enlightenment of God, and the structure of the cosmos itself. This was not a crude object of display. It was meticulously designed. The central lamp, the Ner Tamid, was theoretically kept burning perpetually, a physical manifestation of eternal light in the holy place of the temple. The menorah's illumination was spiritual, political, and cultural, a beacon of identity for the Jewish people. But even in its depiction, the menorah invites questions. The Arch of Titus shows a hexagonal, 2-tiered base adorned with creatures, griffins or sea dragons, imagery strictly forbidden by Jewish law. How could such a sacred object, so strictly codified, appear with pagan motifs? Scholars debate this. Perhaps it was a Roman artistic flourish meant to impress viewers. Maybe it was a ceremonial carrying litter for the parade. Or possibly modifications were sanctioned by the Herodian priesthood to appease Roman sensibilities. Earlier depictions, such as Hasmonean coins, show a simpler 3-legged base. The truth is lost, buried in layers of interpretation and propaganda. The journey of the menorah is meticulously recorded for centuries, only to vanish into mystery. Following its triumph in Rome, Emperor Vespasian placed the menorah in the Temple of Peace, Templum Passus, an imperial museum that celebrated Rome's conquests. There it remained, a gleaming centerpiece of Roman dominance for nearly 400 years. Then came the Vandals. In 455 CE, King Genseric and his forces meticulously sacked Rome for 2 weeks. Procopius, the Byzantine historian, describes how the treasures of the Jews were loaded onto ships and transported across the Mediterranean to Carthage, modern-day Tunis. The menorah, along with countless other treasures, vanished from the city that had displayed it so proudly. Nearly a century later, in 533 CE, the Byzantine general Belisarius conquered the Vandal kingdom. Procopius writes that the Menorah was recovered and brought to Constantinople, the new capital, to be showcased in a triumph. But superstition shadowed its return. A Jew in Justinian's court warned the emperor that these sacred objects were cursed. They brought ruin to Jerusalem, ruin to Rome, and ruin to Carthage. Fearing divine wrath, Justinian allegedly ordered the menorah returned to Jerusalem, to the Nea Church, built in 543 CE. And here the trail grows cold. The Persian conquest of Jerusalem in 614 CE, followed by the Arab conquest in 638 CE, may have sealed its fate. Historians speculate that the menorah, vulnerable and valuable, was likely melted down for coinage. A golden relic, so central to faith and identity, reduced to bullion. Yet alternative theories persist. Some claim the menorah never left Rome, hidden within the Vatican's secret archives or deep basement vaults. This idea was serious enough that in 1996, Israeli Minister of Religious Affairs Shimon Shetrit formally requested Pope John Paul II's assistance in locating it. The Vatican confirmed they did not possess it. Scholars argue that even if it had been there, the Renaissance alone would likely have led to its melting, funding wars and construction projects like St. Peter's Basilica. The menorah's story is more than the tale of a lost object. It is the journey of an entire people. Its capture was a tool of humiliation intended to mock the God of Israel. Yet, centuries later, the very image meant to subjugate has been reclaimed. In 1948, the newly established State of Israel adopted the Arch of Titus menorah as its official coat of arms, transforming a symbol of exile into one of national identity and resilience. Finding the original menorah would close a 2,000-year circle, ending a saga of loss, triumph, and exile. But discovery carries its own peril. The object is not just historical, it is sacred. Its recovery could ignite debates about rebuilding the temple, reignite religious fervor, and stir geopolitical sensitivities that have simmered for millennia. In the end, the menorah remains a light in the shadows of history, a symbol of faith, loss, and the enduring human obsession with reclaiming what was stolen. Its story teaches us that treasures are not measured only in gold or jewels, but in memory, identity, and the passage of centuries. Imagine discovering a treasure map, but not on parchment, not hidden in some dusty codex. Instead, it is hammered into metal, solid, enduring, almost defiant. This is the Copper Scroll, Scroll 3Q15, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unlike its companions, which brim with theology, prophecy, and poetry, the Copper Scroll is bureaucratic, practical, and, most shockingly, entirely secular. There are no psalms, no moral teachings, no prayers, just a list. 64 precise locations across the Judean desert, each pointing to caches of gold, silver, and priestly treasures deliberately buried from prying eyes. It reads like a treasure hunter's dream, but it is very, very real, or at least it was intended to be. The Copper Scroll was discovered in Cave 3 at Qumran in 1952. A seemingly unremarkable crevice among the cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea. But the object it contained was extraordinary. Unlike fragile parchment, this scroll was hammered from a sheet of copper alloy mixed with a small amount of tin, just 1%, but enough to ensure resilience. The choice of metal was deliberate. The author knew that parchment decays, that paper and papyrus crumble over centuries. Copper endures. The scroll was designed to survive, perhaps forever. The message was intended for the distant future, for eyes yet to come, carrying instructions for treasure that could alter the course of nations. Unrolling the scroll was impossible. The metal had become brittle over time. Experts at the Manchester College of Technology had to cut it into 23 strips using specialized saws, a painstaking process that allowed the text to be read without shattering it completely. The writing itself is a puzzle. Composed in Mishnaic Hebrew, it differs from the biblical Hebrew used in other scrolls. Greek letters appear sporadically throughout the text, forming what may be a grid system, a security code, or a set of coordinates. Each line is precise, each location exact, or so it claims. The scroll lists everything from the mundane to the spectacular. Hidden caches of gold, silver, votive vessels, priestly garments, and duplicates of the scroll itself. Estimates suggest the total hoard contains over 4,600 talents of precious metal, translating to somewhere between 60 and 160 tons of gold and silver. To put that into perspective, it could rival the entire national treasury of some modern nations. Here are a few examples from the Copper Scroll. In the fortress, which is in the Vale of Acre, 17 talents of silver, roughly $350,000 today. In the large cistern in the pillar on the north, 14 talents of gold, valued at approximately $20 million. In the cave that is next to the fountain, votive vessels, priceless for historical and religious significance. In the tunnel of the smooth rock, a duplicate copy of the document itself, a failsafe to ensure the treasure's secrets could survive loss or destruction. This was no minor cache. This was the central treasury of a civilization, cataloged with astonishing precision.
And yet, here lies the central mystery. Did this treasure ever exist as the scroll describes, or is it the ultimate historical bait-and-switch? Early theories linked the scroll to the Essenes, the ascetic sect that lived at Qumran. But scholars quickly realized the absurdity of this notion. A small desert monastery could not have accumulated hundreds of tons of gold and silver. Modern research points to a more plausible origin, the treasury of the Jerusalem Temple. When the Roman legions approached in 68 to 70 CE, the high priesthood may have dispersed the temple's wealth into the desert, hoping to save it from confiscation. The Copper Scroll could be the administrative record of that effort, a map written in durable metal so that future generations might reclaim what was temporarily lost. But if that is true, why hasn't it been found? Several explanations emerge. The Romans were experts at interrogation, and Jewish captives may have disclosed some or all of the locations. Josephus records that captured priests were tortured to reveal hidden wealth. It is plausible that the Romans recovered a significant portion, perhaps even diverting it to fund monumental projects such as the Colosseum. Environmental changes add another layer of frustration. Descriptions like the Great Cistern or the Eastern Terrace may refer to landmarks that have eroded, collapsed, or been renamed over 2 millennia. Even a perfectly preserved map becomes useless if the terrain itself has vanished. Finally, there is the code. Greek letters interspersed through the text remain largely undeciphered. Could they be the key to the exact coordinates? Or were they a security measure meant to confound anyone who stumbled upon the scroll? To this day, no one knows. The Copper Scroll is more than a treasure hunt. It is a window into the economic power of the Second Temple. This was not a mere religious site. It was the financial heart of a nation. Gold and silver were not just symbols. They were the currency of survival, the material reflection of political and spiritual authority. By revealing the scale and organization of this wealth, the scroll suggests a future that never came. Jewish resistance planners envisioned a restoration, a reclaiming of sacred assets, a resurrection of Jerusalem's economic and religious centrality. History, of course, had other plans.
If even a fraction of this treasure remains buried somewhere in the Judean desert, it would be the largest undiscovered hoard in the Middle East. The Copper Scroll is not merely a historical curiosity, it is a challenge to every archaeologist, historian, and treasure hunter who dreams of uncovering what was deliberately hidden from history itself. It asks us a question we cannot ignore. If a map exists and the treasure is still there, who will be brave or desperate enough to find it? Picture this, a ship so laden with treasure that, by today's standards, it would rival the GDP of a small nation. A vessel whose cargo made the Titanic look like a dinghy. This was the Flor de la Mar, the flower of the sea. Beneath the shallow waters off the coast of Sumatra lies the ghost of one of history's most opulent shipwrecks. In 1511, it sank carrying the entire looted treasury of the Sultanate of Malacca, the richest city in the East. The riches aboard were staggering, representing not only material wealth, but the violent expansion of European empires into Asia. The Flor de la Mar is widely regarded as the most valuable shipwreck yet to be found, a maritime legend whose treasures remain buried, waiting to be discovered. The Flor de la Mar was built in 1502, a 400-ton nau or carrack, a massive vessel for its time. But this was no flawless sea monster. It was plagued by structural problems from the start. Difficult to maneuver, prone to leaks, and, after 9 years in the corrosive waters of the Indian Ocean, barely seaworthy. Yet its purpose demanded perfection, or at least endurance. After Afonso de Albuquerque conquered Malacca, the ship was loaded to the gunwales with tribute meant for King Manuel I of Portugal. The treasure was breathtaking. The golden lions, 4 life-sized lions carved from solid gold, with eyes of precious stones, adorned with jewels and perfumes. The throne, the Sultan of Malacca's jewel-encrusted throne, symbol of royal authority. Bullion, gold and silver estimated in today's value between $2.6 billion and $17 billion. Cultural artifacts, the golden bracelet of the Raja of Sabandar, intricate maps crafted by Javanese artists, and ceremonial objects that told the story of a powerful kingdom. It was a treasure trove unmatched in its scale, a collection of wealth, artistry, and cultural memory that Europeans had seized in the Age of Discovery. In November 1511, the Flor de la Mar set sail from Malacca toward Goa, its crew and riches on a journey that would never reach its destination. A violent storm in the Strait of Malacca drove the ship onto a reef near Pasai, in northern Sumatra. The ship broke apart. Albuquerque survived, clinging to an improvised raft, but 400 men perished, along with the treasure. The ship became a watery tomb, the riches swallowed by the sea. The exact location of the wreck remains a mystery. Timia Point is believed to be the resting place, but Sumatra's coastline is anything but stable. Geological volatility, centuries of river silt, and seismic activity, including the 2004 tsunami, have likely buried the wreck under meters of sand or moved the coastline miles inland. Today, locating it is like trying to find a needle in an underwater desert that is constantly shifting.
Treasure hunters have tried. Robert Marks, a legendary figure in maritime exploration, spent $20 million searching for the Flor de la Mar. He described it as the richest vessel ever lost at sea. Yet even he could not claim success. Part of the challenge lies not just in geography, but in politics. 3 nations stake a claim. Portugal, as the ship's origin and the empire that commissioned it, they claim it as a state vessel. Indonesia, where the wreck lies, they claim territorial sovereignty. Malaysia, viewing the treasure as cultural heritage stolen at the moment their independence was lost, they assert ownership over the cargo itself. This legal gridlock has effectively frozen the search. Even if someone were to locate the wreck tomorrow, the treasure might never leave the courtroom.
The Flor de la Mar is more than gold and jewels. It is a symbol of the violent redistribution of wealth during the Age of Discovery. For Portugal, it represents the empire's global reach. For Malaysia, it embodies loss, colonial plunder, and the stolen glory of Malacca. Recovering the treasure would not only be a financial windfall, but a historical reckoning. It would return to the descendants of those whose ancestors once ruled Malacca a piece of their cultural patrimony. But centuries of legal disputes and claims have turned the shipwreck into a metaphorical tug-of-war, where the spoils of history may remain buried indefinitely. The Flor de la Mar reminds us that history is not just recorded in archives or monuments. It is often submerged, scattered, and hidden beneath oceans, waiting for those brave, or perhaps desperate, enough to reclaim it. It is a story of ambition, tragedy, and the enduring human desire to reach for what was lost, no matter the cost. Imagine stepping into a room that glows as though it were filled with sunlight itself. Walls shimmer with golden-orange panels, flickering reflections bouncing off mirrors, light refracting through semi-precious stone, so delicate it seems almost alive. This was the Amber Room, a masterpiece that transcended ordinary art. It was not merely a room, but an immersive environment, a creation of 6 tons of amber panels arranged in intricate mosaics, backed with gold leaf, mirrors, and the obsessive craftsmanship of generations. Gifted by Prussia to Russia in 1716, the Amber Room was a diplomatic marvel, a soft power weapon in the ornate language of European courts. It adorned the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo near St. Petersburg, covering 55 square meters in a blaze of color and light. Its presence was awe-inspiring, its disappearance one of the defining mysteries of the Eastern Front. By 2016 valuations, the Amber Room would be worth over $500 million, not counting the immeasurable cultural and historical value. And yet, by 1945, it had vanished completely. Amber is fossilized tree resin. Warm to the touch, fragile, and glowing under light, it has captivated humanity for millennia. In the Amber Room, individual panels were mosaicked into walls and ceilings, producing a sensation of living, breathing sunlight. Gold and mirrors amplified the effect, turning the room into a radiant cathedral of human skill. By 1941, when World War II engulfed Europe, the amber had begun to crumble. The palace's curators tried to dismantle the panels to hide them from the advancing Nazis. But the amber was too brittle. Even the gentlest attempt to remove it caused pieces to break. They settled instead on a temporary solution, covering the walls with wallpaper, a fragile shield against looters. The Nazis, however, were less gentle. In just 36 hours, they dismantled the entire room, crating it for transport. What followed would propel the Amber Room into legend and mystery. Fire, submarine, or curse? The journey of the Amber Room after 1941 is a labyrinth of war, secrecy, and disaster. The crates were shipped to Königsberg Castle, modern-day Kaliningrad, where they were stored and displayed. But the tides of war were relentless. By late 1944, as the Red Army advanced, the Germans moved the room into the castle cellars for protection. Several theories compete to explain its disappearance. Theory 1. Destruction. Most likely. In August 1944,
Allied firebombs struck Königsberg. By April 1945, the Soviets shelled the city. The castle burned for days. Amber, like kindling, would have been consumed in the flames. Soviet investigators later concluded the room was destroyed. Yet some suspect this conclusion was convenient, concealing looting or negligence. Could the room have been deliberately destroyed to cover human failure as much as enemy attack?
Theory 2. The Wilhelm Gustloff. Eyewitnesses claimed to see crates from Königsberg loaded onto the Wilhelm Gustloff, a German transport ship. In January 1945, the vessel was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine, sinking with 9,000 people aboard. If the Amber Room was on board, it now rests at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, entwined with one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history.
Theory 3. The Curse. Searching for the Amber Room has been perilous. Alfred Rode, the curator responsible for overseeing the room in Königsberg, died under mysterious circumstances in 1945, just as Soviet NKVD officers arrived to question him. Decades later, in 1987, Georg Stein, a prominent Amber Room hunter, was found murdered in a Bavarian forest, naked, with his stomach cut open by a scalpel. Some whisper of a curse, a treasure that brings ruin to those who pursue it too recklessly.
Despite the loss, the Amber Room's story does not end in darkness. In 2003, a painstaking reconstruction was inaugurated at the Catherine Palace, funded by German donors. Every panel recreated, every mosaic painstakingly assembled, it stands today as a symbol of reconciliation, of human creativity surviving the horrors of war. And yet, the hunt continues. In 1997, a single original mosaic panel surfaced in the possession of a German pensioner. It proved that not all was lost. Even in ash, the Amber Room survives in fragments, enough to keep historians, treasure hunters, and dreamers returning to the story, hoping for a miracle, a discovery, or even a clue to the room's final resting place. The Amber Room is more than art. It is sunlight frozen in time, a testament to human ingenuity, and a reminder that some treasures, once lost, continue to shape the imagination of the world for centuries. In the early autumn of 1907, Dublin Castle, seat of British authority in Ireland, became the stage for one of the most audacious and mysterious thefts in modern history. Just 4 days before King Edward VII was scheduled to arrive to invest a new peer into the Order of St. Patrick, the Irish crown jewels vanished without a trace. There was no forced entry. The keys had been in the possession of the appointed guardian, yet the safe containing the jewels was empty. The theft was more than a simple burglary. It was a window into a decaying colonial administration, a crime that revealed the moral and political rot festering at the heart of British rule in Ireland. The jewels themselves were not the ancient crown jewels of the High Kings of Ireland, nor were they artifacts of medieval power. They were the 19th century ceremonial regalia of the Order of St. Patrick, the British chivalric order created to assert dominance over Ireland while maintaining the appearance of pageantry and respect. The treasure consisted of 2 main items, a jeweled star and a badge. Together they held 394 stones, many from the jewelry of Queen Charlotte, wife of George III, including sparkling Brazilian diamonds and deep green emeralds. At the time, the total value was £50,000, roughly $20 million in today's terms. But their significance was not merely financial. They represented authority, legitimacy, and the pomp of empire.
The jewels were kept under lock and key in the Bedford Tower of Dublin Castle. Sir Arthur Vickers, the Ulster King of Arms, was the official custodian. Vickers, however, was notoriously lax. Friends were given keys in drunken moments of trust, and security protocols were haphazardly enforced. The prime suspect quickly emerged, Francis Shackleton, brother of the famed Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton. Shackleton lived with Vickers and was deeply in debt. But the case was not as simple as theft for money. Shackleton belonged to a clandestine homosexual circle within Dublin Castle, a community operating in secrecy, as homosexuality was illegal and socially reviled at the time. Investigating the theft threatened to expose high-ranking officials engaged in acts that would have scandalized the empire. In essence, the jewels became a pawn in a web of blackmail, secrecy, and political preservation. The authorities chose cover-up over justice. Vickers was dismissed from his post but never charged. Shackleton, though he would later serve prison time for unrelated fraud, was never prosecuted for the theft. A 1927 memo even hints that the jewels were offered back to the newly formed Irish Free State, but the offer was rejected to avoid political embarrassment. It is widely believed that the jewels were quietly dismantled and sold across Europe, leaving no trace of their grandeur.
The disappearance of the Irish crown jewels was more than a scandal. It was a metaphor for the decline of British authority in Ireland. The theft humiliated the crown at a time when Irish nationalism was gaining strength, exposing both incompetence and moral corruption within the colonial administration. Sir Arthur Vickers, whose career was ruined, would later be assassinated by the IRA in 1921, a grim footnote linking the theft to the broader turbulence of Irish history. The jewels themselves, lost to time, remain a haunting symbol of the messy, scandalous end of British rule, a reminder that empires, no matter how glittering their pageantry, are vulnerable to human frailty and hidden vice. Today, the Irish crown jewels endure not in vaults or museums, but in legend. They are a story of intrigue, betrayal, and lost splendor, a cautionary tale of how symbols of power can vanish in an instant, leaving only questions and shadows behind. In 1928, Maharaja Bhupinder Singh of Patiala arrived in Paris like a storm of opulence. He brought with him iron chests overflowing with gems, a personal treasury the size of which most European kings could only envy. His mission was clear: to commission Cartier, the preeminent jewelry house of the era, to craft a necklace that would surpass all others. What emerged was not just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of imperial vanity, wealth, and the dazzling excesses of the Raj. 2 decades later, this masterpiece vanished without a trace, only to resurface decades later, fragmented and incomplete in a London antique shop. Its journey is a tale of luxury, decline, and the disintegration of an era. The Patiala necklace was the pinnacle of Art Deco design, a triumph of artistry and engineering. Its centerpiece was the legendary De Beers diamond, a pale yellow gem weighing 234.65 carats, the 7th largest diamond in the world. Surrounding it were 5 rows of platinum chains, studded with 2,930 diamonds, totaling roughly 1,000 carats, interspersed with large Burmese rubies. Every angle caught the light, turning the necklace into a shimmering cascade of fire and brilliance. The value, even by modern standards, is staggering, estimated between $30 million and $50 million. Yet its significance went far beyond money. This necklace was the ultimate statement of power, prestige, and the extravagant lifestyle of the Maharajas.
History has a way of catching up to even the most dazzling displays of wealth. In 1947, India gained independence, and with it, the princely states, including Patiala, lost their revenues, privileges, and political power. Suddenly, the treasures of the Maharajas became more than symbols of pride. They were financial lifelines. The Patiala necklace vanished from the treasury around 1948. For decades, it was presumed lost, perhaps dismantled or sold in secret. Then, in 1982, the De Beers diamond, the very heart of the necklace, surfaced alone at a Sotheby's auction, fetching $3.16 million. The rest of the necklace remained missing. The skeleton of the necklace finally emerged in 1998, discovered by a Cartier representative in a second-hand shop in London. The platinum chains were intact, but the diamonds had been meticulously removed, likely sold individually on the black market or through collectors. Cartier purchased the skeletal frame and painstakingly restored it using cubic zirconia and synthetic diamonds, reviving the form, if not the original glory. The Patiala necklace is a story of wealth, decadence, and impermanence. It represents the opulence of the Maharajas at the height of colonial India and the rapid unraveling of that world after independence. The dispersal of its jewels mirrors the wider liquidation of royal assets, a symbolic collapse of an era. Its contemporary reappearance has not been without controversy. When the restored necklace was worn by influencer Emma Chamberlain at the Met Gala, it sparked debate. How do we reconcile colonial-era extravagance with modern celebrity culture? A necklace that once symbolized the power of a princely state now functions as a fashion statement, a reminder that treasures, like history, evolve in meaning as they pass through time. The Patiala necklace is more than jewelry. It is a reflection of ambition and impermanence, a testament to human fascination with brilliance and excess, and a warning of how even the most formidable symbols can vanish or be transformed through the currents of history. At the end of World War II, Japan was a nation in ruin. Cities lay in ashes, and the imperial government had surrendered to the Allied forces. Among the many orders handed down to the Japanese military was a simple yet symbolic command: surrender all weapons. Tanks, rifles, and countless swords were collected, piled into warehouses, and cataloged for destruction. But among the stacks of ordinary swords was one that was far from ordinary: the Honjo Masamune. This was no mere weapon. Forged in the 13th century by Masamune, widely regarded as the greatest swordsmith in Japanese history, the Honjo Masamune was a blade of almost mythical beauty. Its steel shimmered with a delicate pattern of knee crystals along the temper line, an indication of Masamune's mastery and the sword's spiritual resonance. It was the sword of the Tokugawa shoguns, passed down through generations as a symbol of authority, honor, and the very soul of the samurai. The sword's name derives from General Honjo Shigenaga, who captured it in battle in 1561. For centuries, it was treated as a national treasure of Japan. More than a weapon, it was an emblem of governance, lineage, and the martial spirit of an entire era. To hold it was to hold the soul of the shogunate itself. The Honjo Masamune was not only a work of art, but also a living relic. Samurai believed that a sword could contain the spirit of its maker and its wielder. In the hands of the Tokugawa, this blade was more than steel. It was a talisman of power and legitimacy. Losing it would be not merely theft or misplacement, it would be a wound in the cultural memory of Japan. In December 1945, Tokugawa Ieyasu, head of the Tokugawa family, followed orders and surrendered the Honjo Masamune at the Mejiro police station in Tokyo. A receipt was issued, a mundane piece of bureaucracy that would turn into the first clue of a centuries-long mystery. The name signed on the document? Sergeant Coldy Beemore. There was no Sergeant Coldy Beemore. No such soldier existed. Scholars and historians believe this may have been a phonetic error, perhaps Cole D. Blackmore, or another misheard name. But despite exhaustive searches, the man was never identified. The chaos of post-war Japan was complete. Millions of swords were melted down for scrap. Many were taken home by American soldiers as souvenirs, often treated as curiosity rather than the priceless artifacts they were. It is widely speculated that the Honjo Masamune now rests somewhere in the United States, its owner unaware that a seemingly ordinary, perhaps even rusty sword is in fact the Japanese equivalent of Excalibur.
The loss of the Honjo Masamune is not just a story of a missing object, it is a cultural amputation. Unlike treasures lost to natural disasters or war, this blade vanished into bureaucracy, mismanagement, and the fog of occupation. Its disappearance represents a break in the continuity of centuries of Japanese history. To recover the Honjo Masamune would be monumental. It would be a national event, a moment of historical reconciliation, and a restoration of a symbol that embodies not just power, but the spirit and artistry of Japan's samurai era. Until that day comes, the Honjo Masamune exists in legend, a sword surrendered to a ghost, waiting silently for someone to recognize its true worth. It is a reminder that not all treasures are lost to time or tide. Some are lost to human error, bureaucracy, and the chaos that follows war. Imagine billions in gold, looted from banks, temples, and private vaults across Southeast Asia during the chaos of World War II, buried deep in secret tunnels in the Philippine mountains. This is the legend of Yamashita's gold, a treasure so vast that in 1996, a Hawaii court awarded $22 billion to a locksmith who claimed to have found a golden Buddha from the hoard and endured torture over it. General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the Tiger of Malaya, is said to have orchestrated this colossal theft during the final retreat of the Japanese Imperial Army. While mainstream historians remain skeptical about the full scale of the treasure, the U.S. legal system, through the Roxas case, recognized its existence in part, lending a disturbing legitimacy to the legend. According to the lore, the Imperial Army ran a clandestine operation codenamed Golden Lily. Across the occupied territories, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, the army systematically seized gold bars, platinum, religious statuary, and private wealth. The plundered riches were not left in the open. They were buried in elaborate tunnels, often sealed with explosives, and POW laborers were allegedly trapped inside to ensure the locations remained secret. Entire mountains, jungles, and riverbanks became vaults of unimaginable wealth and unimaginable human cost. The modern legend crystallized in 1971 when Rogelio Rojas, a Filipino treasure hunter, discovered a hidden tunnel near Baguio City. Inside was a 1-ton golden Buddha, its head detachable and filled with diamonds. Word of the find reached President Ferdinand Marcos, who dispatched soldiers to seize the treasure and arrest Rojas. According to court documents, Rojas was tortured to force him to reveal the locations of other caches. Decades later, after Marcos was deposed, Rojas sued the state. The court found that he had indeed discovered the golden Buddha and that Marcos had unlawfully seized it. This verdict validated the legend in part, connecting Yamashita's gold to the Marcos family fortune and fueling speculation that the hoard was far larger than a single statue.
Some conspiracy theorists argue that the U.S. government recovered much of the treasure and funneled it into the so-called Black Eagle Trust, a secret slush fund for Cold War operations. While these claims are widely circulated, they remain unproven. What is clear, however, is that the legend has persisted for decades, inspiring treasure hunters to risk life and limb in remote tunnels and mountainous terrain across the Philippines. Yamashita's gold is more than a lost treasure. It is a modern myth, blending war crimes, dictatorship, and shadow finance. It captures the imagination because it represents a collision of human greed, ambition, and desperation, a hoard so vast that even decades later it continues to drive men and women to dangerous extremes. The story endures not just because of the gold itself, but because it embodies the darkest intersections of history, a dictator's avarice, a general's strategy, and the human cost of war. To seek Yamashita's gold is to chase the ghost of history, to wander tunnels where the past and legend converge, always aware that the ultimate prize may be just out of reach, or perhaps never meant to be found. Deep within the dense, uncharted rainforests east of the Andes lies a legend that has haunted explorers for centuries: Paititi. Unlike Atlantis, a purely mythical city of imagination, Paititi is tied to real history. It is said to be the final refuge of the Inca nobility, a city where they fled after the Spanish conquest, carrying with them unimaginable treasures of gold, silver, and sacred knowledge. For generations, Paititi was dismissed as folklore, whispered in the camps of explorers and adventurers who returned from the Amazon with stories of strange ruins and hidden riches. But unlike the vague allure of El Dorado, modern technology suggests that Paititi might actually exist, hidden, protected by geography and the passage of time. Descriptions of Paititi paint it as a stone city tucked deep in the rainforests of Peru's Madre de Dios region. According to legend, it was a thriving urban center, comparable in scale and sophistication to Machu Picchu, yet deliberately hidden to evade Spanish detection. Among its treasures was said to be the Disk of the Sun, a golden artifact removed from the Temple of the Sun in Cusco. Such items would not merely be valuable, they were sacred, symbols of the Inca connection to the cosmos and the divine authority of their rulers. Evidence for Paititi's existence is tantalizing. In 1925, explorers discovered the Pucharo petroglyphs, enigmatic rock carvings deep in the jungle. Some scholars believe these markings are more than decoration. They may be directional waymarkers pointing toward the lost city, a coded map left by those who fled the conquistadors. In the 21st century, the quest for Paititi has evolved from machete-wielding explorers hacking through dense foliage to researchers using LiDAR technology and satellite imagery. Thierry Jauman and other investigators have identified geometric patterns in the jungle, square lakes, and formations dubbed the Pyramids of Patiala that hint at man-made structures now reclaimed by vegetation. Yet the jungle is as much an obstacle as it is a protector. Paititi lies in a perilous region, controlled in part by cocaine traffickers and inhabited by uncontacted tribes such as the Mashco Piro. Government restrictions are strict. Expeditions are often blocked to safeguard these communities, leaving the city shrouded in mystery and speculation. Paititi is unique among the treasures we have explored because it is a place, not an object. Its discovery would represent the last great terrestrial discovery on Earth. Finding it would rewrite our understanding of the Inca resistance, proving that they not only survived the Spanish conquest, but maintained complex urban centers deep within the Amazon. More than gold or artifacts, Paititi represents the endurance of a civilization, the resilience of culture, and the human drive to protect knowledge and legacy from invaders. It is the ultimate symbol of the frontier, where history, myth, and modern technology converge, challenging explorers to uncover what has remained hidden for centuries. Paititi stands as a reminder that some treasures are not merely wealth to be claimed, but secrets of humanity waiting to be understood. These significant missing treasures, from the A-Temple Menorah to the Amber Room in Yamashita's gold, are united by their absence, existing on the boundary between history and myth. Created at civilization's peak and lost in chaos, their continued pursuit reflects human ambition, curiosity, and the persistence of hope. Their true value lies not in their material worth, but in the compelling narrative their absence creates. These treasures represent the persistence of hope. They remind us that even in a mapped-out world, there are still secrets waiting to be found. So, I want to hear from you. If you had the resources to hunt for just one of these, knowing the odds, which one are you going after? Let me know in the comments.